Welcome back, guys. This is the Yankees Farm Report, and this is our first episode of 2026. It's good to be back. We've got a few topics we want to discuss today, but as always, before we get started, I want to thank the channel members for helping keep the lights on. I want to thank all the subscribers of the channel that watch, like, share the content. And if this is your first time watching, please, I would appreciate it if you hit that like button and hit the sub. And that said, let's get started going right into it to the IFAs. I know it's been a big topic. On Thursday is signing day for the Yankees. The upheaval was a shock. I don't think anybody was expecting it. I didn't hear anything. There were no rumors. It was like the news just dropped from one day to another. Um, the big thing on the Yankees part was Wandy's departure, and I get bits and pieces of information from people who are in the know, right? For example, talking about Wandy, I know for 3 years Wandy was linked to the Yankees, right? And for 2+ years, the Yankees had told me there's nothing that's going to stop us from signing Wandy, and I guess they just didn't see Roland's departure, right? So I come to find out that, or I asked, like, what was Wandy's number? My assumption was that it was going to be 4 million because when I asked the Yankees and people that knew, they were like, yeah, it's right there, it's right there, it's right there. But now I've come to find out that the Yankees number was actually 3.35 mil, right? The Yankees tried to get up to 3.8, even 4 million, but being that they had no director, they had no one to sign off on it. And that's the thing with the Yankees, that if there's a certain threshold, I think it's anything over, I want to say 100K, there really is no approval that's needed. I think it's 100K, it might be 50, but something of that jumping from 3.35 to five, on an extra 500K to 4 million, that required a director approval, which they don't have. And once the Yankees started dancing around it and Wandy's people got wind of it, they just decided to cut bait and said, you know what, we're going to go out and look for another deal. I mean, that's what I was told. Um, and I kind of got into a little bit of a thing where I think it was Wilbur. Wilbur had reported that Wandy had left the Yankees, and that wasn't the case at that time. That wasn't the case. The Yankees even had told me at that moment, like, Wandy's literally here at the complex right now. We're still negotiating. Whatever you reporting you're seeing out there, it's not accurate. So that's what I put out there. And I know Wilbur got a little salty over that. It is what it is. Um, so moving forward, another topic regarding the IFAs is the fact that the Yankees don't have an IFA director, right? And tomorrow and Thursday or tomorrow is essentially signing day. What I've come to find out through sources is that they did have a director, and that director was Edgar Mateo. Edgar Mateo was promoted to be the director, but some within the front office didn't like it and spiked his nomination. And I believe that's why he left the organization, and not necessarily that he was fired. Um, I asked other academies about it, and other academies did tell me that they were a little shocked about it because, according to them, they thought that Mateo had just signed a new deal with the Yankees, so it came as a bit of a shock to them. Um, hold on one second.
Now, can I jump in with a question here?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Do you feel like, since relationships are probably a big deal in
Mhm.
that market, is how damaging do you see Mateo's departure on top of Roland's?
I mean, I think it would be one and the same, right? Because I'm going to assume that Mateo probably fostered a lot of the relationships, right? Because a lot of the academies are in DR. He is from there. He's the one that travels abroad. He travels to the academies in Venezuela and in Mexico as well. So
And
I'm under
he's
the
risen up
assumption,
the ranks as a scout. He was a scout, right, and then moved up.
right? He was the number two man there.
Mhm.
And from what I've read, I think I saw it was on the Daily News that no one else within the scouting department was let go or was released. Just him and Roland did have three guys under him. There was Mateo, it was I think La Rufa and one other guy. I can't remember his name right now.
Did Woody?
I can't remember. I think it was. I want to say Dennis. I can't remember.
Dennis Woody, I think, is a
Yeah, it
cross
might be
gender.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was the three of them. Um, and so that's why the Yankees didn't have a director. That's why there's been multiple reporting. I think in the Daily News had an article yesterday that mentioned that the Yankees had just started looking for the new IFA director, which was wild to me because I think I've seen Francis Romero had mentioned as well that they're in the process. And other sources have also said the same thing. But according to the Daily News, they have just started the process.
So what you're saying makes sense in the timeline because I get the impression that they just let Roland's contract expire and then
Mhm.
didn't renew it.
Yep.
Then by the reason maybe this is taking so long is that Mateo moved up and then something complicated that and now they started from scratch. Does that
Yeah,
sound right?
that's exactly what my thinking is. That's why it's taken them so long because they did have a director, but like I said, some within the org didn't like the ascension. It spiked his nomination, and that under the assumption that's why he left the organization. Because
Okay.
through conversations that I've had, I know how much he cared about the organization. I know how much he how much pride he took in working for the Yankees. So that's my assumption.
Okay.
There was some rumors on the IFA front in regards to the Yankees trying to poach another player or a top prospect, and the rumors was that was Colome, who is linked to the I was going to say Oakland, to the A's. It did. If you guys seen reports early on, he was supposed to get I think it was 2.5 million, and that number has risen to 4.5 million, which is just outside of what the Yankees have. By my count, I think the Yankees have, I want to say, between 4 to 4.2 million on hand. And I've also had people asking me, are the Yankees going to trade that money? That the Yankees typically don't trade IFA money. They typically trade for IFA money. And if it's going to happen, it's usually does it wouldn't happen early on because you don't know what's going to happen in the middle of the season or during the season, right? This typically happens at the trade deadline or towards the end of the season where IFA money is traded, where teams don't just want to lose that money. And for a lot of people, yes, the IFA bonus pool money has to be spent during that IFA class. It doesn't roll over. You can't save it because I've seen a lot of people saying that to me or putting that um, or commenting on some of my tweets in regards to how trying to save that money or pocket that money. He can't pocket that money. That money, you either use it or you lose it.
So this is a bit of a if it's not unprecedented, it's pretty close of an IFA period for the Yankees because they don't usually lose top guys this close to the
Mhm.
signing opening, and they don't usually have this much money on hand.
No.
Usually they've got this locked up for the most part.
Yep.
So it's a
And when
different time right now.
it is, I mean, all around, I would say that, right? And in the beginning of the season, if you were to take the Pipeline's list, they had the number two prospect, which was Juan Diaz. They had the number nine prospect, which was Jason Orr, and I think number 43, which was Jose Colinas. So they were en route to having a pretty good IFA class. And I don't have a confirmation yet, but I'm under the assumption that I think that they're not going to get Jessiel Bermudez, which is to me is a big loss to the class. I'm just getting that feeling. I've seen him doing a lot of showcasing. He's removed the Yankee stuff from his IG, which is not a definitive indicator that a player has broken ties with a team, but where there's smoke, there's fire. I've in the past he has responded to me. He hasn't as of late. So like I said, I'm getting that vibe that something is amiss here. I've seen him showcasing a lot over the last 2 weeks or so.
He's doing a
Um,
lot of advertising for a kid who's locked up.
yeah, yeah, and rightfully so. I'm always for the worker, man. I'm always for get your money, man. Get your money.
Sure, no question.
hmm
I mean,
But
you
it
go
would
back
be a
and look
huge
at
loss.
those prospect lists, those top 50s before the signing dates start, and it's not, it's not pretty.
No.
Most of them aren't going to be names that you know.
hmm
So whatever you can get now, get it.
Hmm.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at this, the Baseball America Top 100 International Prospects list, and it's sad. There's no Yankees on it.
hmm
It's obviously it's I think all of us were taken aback by how this has gone down. I mean, maybe we'll dive deeper into it. I think there's I don't want to say there's no good way of looking at losing all these guys, like and especially a season, but the process of what they're trying to do. There's upside into how they want to improve it. There's downside into how things have played out. But at the end of the day, it's tough seeing a free agent class that's not gonna bring back a gem, or at least a top signee like they have typically had basically every year since
hmm
Dominguez signed. So.
Yeah. It's definitely a different time and just it. it's a weird feeling for me, right? Because like I said,
Mhm.
I typically have one or two guys that I specifically look forward to as a high ranking kid, and then this season it's like it feels like it's all low level signings. I don't think they have a six figure kid. They could, but as far as I know, that's not the case. So I mean, for me, I'm gonna I'm gonna look back to the previous class, right? I have high hopes for Manny Cedeno, um, Juan Torres, Ranciel. There's a bunch of guys in in the last class that I'm hoping uh, to reach that next level this coming season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, obviously, it was a lot of 24 and 25 guys playing at DSL level this year, but I would say that this past season, I think, was the most encouraging season from a DSL performance we've seen in a few years now.
Hmm.
I mean, maybe there wasn't. Jeremy, obviously, De La Rosa was shipped off to San Francisco, but outside of him, there maybe wasn't a super dominant guy that was going to jump into a top 100 like Arias a few years
Hmm.
ago after his DSL debut, but there was what they lacked in, I guess, quality. They had quantity of
Right.
guys who performed very well, and
Yep.
maybe
Agreed.
without De La Rosa, there's no guy who's a for sure top 20 prospect in the system right now. But I think there's 5 to 8 guys who are in that 30, 25 to 50 range that all and by this time next year we're talking as top 20 prospects if they're still with the organization. So it is there is some positive with how they performed this year.
Hmm.
And the organization really needs those guys to develop.
Yeah.
They don't. I mean, they're obviously not going to all jump into that top prospect picture, but the cupboards are being emptied out. The number of prospects they've traded in
Yeah.
the last 7 months, if you want to say that,
Hmm.
it's they really could use those guys to come stateside and
Hmm.
become viable players this year. So I'm not going to say that there's pressure on them because there's pressure on everybody in that business, but would really, really be helpful if we saw some guys take the next step.
Yeah, for me, I want to say that I have 10 to a dozen guys that I'm really looking forward to coming stateside this year, starting with like Alexander Almonte, Kevin Centeno, uh, maybe Steven Mariñez, Justin Capellan, Carlos Villarroel, Carlos Rodon, um, Richard Matik,
That was the
Juan
one I was waiting for you to
Torres.
say.
Well, when you look at
There's a
the
few guys to
catching
look
depth
forward to.
chart, I mean, some of those
Yes.
catchers you mentioned,
Yeah. And Kenny
they're our
Pineda.
next hope, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Pineda and Villarreal are the two that stick out to me the most. I like Capellan, but a little older, and I from what I've heard is the defense isn't the greatest. So Villarreal and I probably butchered that pronouncement. I heard you say it
You're
with
close. You're
with
close. You're
the
close.
I heard you say it with the flavor, and I thought I could go for it.
It was close. It was
But
close.
but him and Pineda, they definitely are two guys that really stick out. And I would say Pineda, I think he's probably their fourth best guy from the DFA from the DSL this
DSL.
year.
Hmm.
Overall in the Yankees organization. So yeah, it's there's definitely is a lot of intriguing guys who should hopefully be playing in the FCL this year.
Definitely. Definitely. Moving on to the next topic. I've seen a lot of posts from Yankee fans begging for a starting pitcher. They're talking about trade these two or three top prospects. Usually Elmer is included in those deals, but then the next day I'll see something about how Elmer Rodriguez is a budding ace. So like, which is it? Which is it? I mean, personally, I really like Freddie Peralta, but my thing is I don't want to trade ERC or Carlos Delgado for a rental. That's where I'm at. And I also do not trust Cashman when it comes to trading for starting pitching. His record is atrocious. I mean, Peralta could be the exception, but like I said, it would be a rental.
That would be 3 years in a row of making a trade like that for a guy with 1 year left till free agency.
And what do they have to show for that?
Right,
I mean, they had a
exactly.
World Series appearance, but
I mean, if
You
you're
know,
the Brewers, you're looking at the Yankees. Yeah, we'll take another. They got Caleb Durbin out of it. It's an everyday player. And I mean, yeah, we'll take another look at your system because I'm sure we can find something we like here.
And another kid that I've mentioned that I've seen in some of these trades is like, and it's to me it's baffling how Yankee fans have kind of just flipped on Jason Dominguez. I mean, he wasn't granted he wasn't Mickey Mantle. I mean, you had to be insane to think that he was going to be Mickey Mantle out of the gate. But I think he held his own for a 21, 22-year-old kid. And he gave you things to look forward to. And if you've followed Jason's career, you'll always notice that typically when he starts a league, he's slow. But when he comes back, it clicks for him.
For sure. You know, and I'll tie this into Peralta some too. I think the Yankees, both fans and and the team see that Aaron Judge he's gonna be 34 years old, right? Or 30,
Mhm.
at least 33. You know, he's getting up there. Garrett Cole is getting towards the end. Stanton's getting towards the end. Realistically, it's unless it's going to be hard to get another superstar like Aaron Judge in the door. So realistically, we're looking at 1 to maybe 3 more years of true top contention. We've
That's a lot.
obviously seen us.
I'm looking at like two more prime years of Judge.
Yeah, so that's I think where the Peralta trade talk comes. And you mentioned pitchers, not working out. I will say I feel like I feel like Peralta is probably one of the more polished and refined pitchers
Hmm.
we've looked at. Montas when we acquired him was having shoulder injuries. Sonny, I mean, was definitely a quality guy, but I don't feel like he was at the level of Peralta was. So there for sure is concern with it, and it would be hard to part with a guy like Carlos Legrand. But I think that when you're trying to go all in, that's kind of a when you look at the options and you look at what trades for pitching is costing, that's kind of a guy that could make a difference. I think that also goes to Jason. We've talked plenty about it. I'm a little more bearish on his top end potential. I've kind of likened him to a faster version of Jock Peterson, where he can be a really good left-handed bat. A guy who puts up a 120, 130 OPS plus and steal plenty of bases. But I just don't trust him defensively. And I just don't know how much he'll ever develop from the right side. But that Jock Peterson, when he was at his best, is a really good player. The question is, when you're trying to go all in to get this title before Judge, is that something you want to wait on? I'm not trying to say here anyone's right or wrong for those thoughts, as long as, the process behind it is fair, but I understand why his name is coming up. I think that Yankees are honestly in a kind of decent position where you can make a good case for, hey, if you get the right player that helps this year, or maybe another year, sure, I could see making that trade. But also, if you can't get the deal you want, hey, we'll keep this very talented guy who, could blossom even further than what we think after this last year where he was pretty poor defensively and versus right-handers, he could prove me wrong and others wrong that he can do it there. So it's a very unique position where I don't think there's a right answer completely.
So obviously, it seems like the Yankees would still prefer to have Cody Bellinger back, in which case he takes up an everyday spot. But if they don't, I'm just going to throw this name out there because I think he's a good player and a good right-handed hitter, and that's Austin Hayes. How would you feel about a platoon where Dominguez is on the heavy side and you have a good right-handed option to platoon against the left-hander? I think that becomes a good player.
It's the same thing with Rosario and McMahon at third base. I think that's a three WAR at least player from left field. That's an all-star caliber player potentially,
Yeah,
depending on that year at the position.
it would be nice if Dominguez was hitting on all cylinders and everything had rounded out at this point. But I agree with what Carlos said. He's 22 and
Mhm.
he's barely gotten his feet wet. And I'd love to see what that looks like when he gets some more time.
This is one of my biggest issues. It feels like for a very long time now, the Yankees are always here, right? Where they need to go out and get this. They need to go out and get this. And and I hate to go back there, but when the core four and Bernie were around, it was you built a team by having X amount of homegrown players, Then you went out and made, what is it, two or three key free agent signings. Then you made a trade here and there. But then once that was in place, every year was like, we would like to have this guy. It would be nice to have this guy. It wasn't, we need to have this guy. And it just feels like
Hmm.
Groundhog's Day with the Yankees. It's like every year it feels that way. We need a starting pitcher. No, we need two starting pitchers. No, we need two guys in the bullpen. It's just, it's rinse, cycle, repeat.
I think what you just described with kind of those core 4 years, that's much more what the Dodgers are now, where they've had needs that come up, but let's not be naive about it. I mean, just speaking in 2024, they really needed a starting pitcher. They went and got Jack Flaherty. Um, it's that's I think always going to be a part of baseball, especially with pitchers and just the rate of injuries that happen. But you're right. I think that's something that goes to the front office. And as much as I do like Cashman, I think there's something he's let down is sometimes leaving positions unfilled. We all remember the fiasco of left field in 2023. Um, third base this past year. I like Ryan McMahon. I think he's a quality left-handed bat and has a great glove. But if you went out and solved that position in the in free agency, you save yourself having to trade a Griffin Herring. And I just think that yeah, they've probably let holes persist too long, where it creates these needs where we've had to trade some guys like Caleb Durbin, who had been a really nice bench piece this year. Um, so yeah, it is a bit of a I think when you're always in contention, you're always going to be trading for things that are ready now, just because that's just the way of the beast. I mean, those top era Yankee teams were always trading guys somehow, trading for Richie Sexson or Lance Berkman or whatever vet on an expiring deal you want to mention. But I think you're right that they've let a couple too many guys go, and it's really weak in the farm system. Where I think we are talking this year. It's surprising how good of a year they had for the farm, even with trading all those 15 guys at the deadline, because they've just never been able to truly restock. With having some of the least IFA money, some of the least draft pool money, losing draft picks. I think it is a credit for the job they've done in the minor leagues, but also, yeah, it's they keep making the job hard on themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, and to me, it's just I feel like it's just like a lack of creativity because you, like you said before, the Dodgers seem to figure it out, other teams seem to figure it out, but the Yankees just seem to they want that 5 yard check down, right? They're still playing in the West Coast offense instead of throwing the ball down the field. They just want that. I see the 5 yards, 5 yard out, 5 yard out, quick slants, and I don't understand it for the life of me. I mean, of course, I've told you guys before, I prefer my Yankees to be homegrown, and I understand that not every prospect is going to pan out. I understand that not every prospect has a place in the organization, but I feel like when they do make trades, I'm like, why did you spend that prospect capital on that?
Right. Instead of doing your take this last trade deadline, for instance, instead of doing some of that work in the off season, waiting until the trade deadline to address those things when they were needs in the off season too.
I mean, listen, I liked the Austin Slater deal at the time of it. I thought Slater would have been a nice piece for the left-hand platoon, but also that's a guy you can easily get in February, even before pitchers and catchers report. I think Austin Slater basically signed like a 1 year, $1 million deal. Why couldn't you have had the foresight to, hey, we have Trent Grisham, Cody Bellinger, and Jason Dominguez. We kind of need a right-handed guy in the outfield that's not Aaron Judge. So yeah, no, it cost you Gage Zeal, who, I don't know if he was going to be a frontline starter, but I thought he had nice 4 or 5 potential. Um, so yeah, no, I think that's the one that really sticks to me the most is, yeah, you're just kind of having to get guys that you could, if you had the foresight, you can get earlier on, which is
So,
why I'm happy they re-signed Ahmed Rosario because he fit perfectly in that
Oh
role.
my
We
God.
started playing
I was
better when we
surprised.
had platoons, and so hey, platoons worked for us. Let's just get the guy who helped make that happen for 2.5 million. Like good business,
I,
easy.
I, I
it's
was
the
actually surprised
messaging
by that.
changes too.
I was
Sorry,
surprised by that because typically the Cashman would wait to trade for him.
well, you recall a few years ago when people said, you're very right-handed, and then it was, well, it doesn't matter if you're right-handed or left-handed. That's not a concern of ours. And now what's the message this offseason? we're too left-handed. And so last year, all of a sudden, when it was kind of evident that you don't have balance, now it's important to us. And now Boone feels like we have our best team that we've had because we have complementary pieces. It seems like that's something that people were calling for years. And on the Rosario piece, getting back to Dominguez, he seemed like he had an impact on Dominguez when he got there. And I would like to see if that's something that carries over because I know Rosario is a hard worker in the offseason. He's done a lot to help himself. Does that do anything? Does that impact Jason? Because it sounded like Jason followed him around and became a disciple of his. And Rosario is clearly a very good team guy.
And that's just a perfect segue into the weather trade. I mean, Rachel Bakovich strikes again. If you're a fan of the deal on paper, you gotta like what the Yankees did here, right? They traded an undrafted free agent, a 12th round pick, a 14th round pick, and an unranked IFA. Personally, I had high hopes for Dylan Lewis. I thought he showed a lot this season. I was expecting a big things from him coming in the upcoming season. And the same thing for Juan Matheus. You know, he put up good walks, his K rate, he made solid contact, and he played solid defense. I was kind of looking forward to what he was going to be doing this season.
And we talked to Dylan Lewis and what a great guy he is, and so what an easy guy to root for. That was really disappointing to see him go because I think he was one I was most looking forward to watching play this year. I'm a believer in him, so that was a tough one. And I don't. I know that the reports coming out are, oh, the Yankees didn't give up anything they're going to miss, or these are lower level guys, and that's all well and good, but they also could have just traded for nothing. I mean, Ryan Weathers has, and we trade for pitching, like Aaron was saying before, not a great track record. And this is a guy with injury histories, had trouble staying on the field. So it could be four interesting guys for somebody who doesn't solve your problem of innings. And that's
Yeah.
not, I don't want to dump on Ryan Weathers. He just got here. And I hope it
Yeah,
turns out great and he's,
yeah,
an
exactly.
all-star at midseason, but,
I was
but
I was
this
talking
is
about
iffy.
I was talking to
Yeah,
Aaron about it yesterday. I'm looking over his numbers. He hasn't had one season where he pitched 100 innings.
yeah, I'll start on the weather side because I do want to talk about the prospects, but we've seen how expensive pitching is, and Ryan Garcia said it on his, on Fireside, the Yankees, that it's a lot easier to swallow when you're trading, when you're betting on availability rather than ability. Weathers his stuff, we've seen it all on Twitter. He has some really nice stuff, some heat from with the fastball, which is something this organization hasn't had. I feel like the thing was Cam Schlitter had like the 50th fastest pitches for a starter this year, and he only played in like 40 innings in the regular season. So it is good to get someone who brings something we don't really have. Um, and I would rather bet that he is gonna, pitch more than he has. The other way I look at it is Edward Cabrera was a popular name that a lot of people liked. Probably a little bit better stuff, except I think his fastball isn't really that good, but better stuff than Weathers. But, he really, besides, this was the first year where he was reasonably healthy. So like he was a little bit more polished, a little bit more, to go off of with, 137 innings this year, but he's never really had to put it all together either, and that cost the Cubs a lot more than it did for us for Ryan Weathers.
And his injuries are
Um,
all arm problems.
yeah.
That's a ticking time bomb.
So, that's just, I guess, my way of saying, I do. Obviously, it's risky trading for any pitcher
Any
is a
pitcher.
liability. But like you said, it's good that it truly isn't just everything arm related. And it is good that there still is upside if he can be somewhat healthy. If he gives us 100 innings, especially giving us some of those in the first couple months while we wait for Rodon and Cole back. Maybe I've seen it, maybe transitions to the bullpen come playoff time, and you have him for 2 more years after. I get why they did it, but on the prospect side, just because I want to give my, flowers to them. Anyone who's been watching me on these videos knows that I was pretty early on calling my shot in Dylan Lewis. So to see a guy who, you just stick to and cling to and just, see grow like that and become a guy who can headline a trade, it is bittersweet because I really thought he had more than just I thought he could have been like a legitimate, all-star, multiple time all-star in the MLB. Can do that. So to lose that hurts. The other guy that really hurts me and I was very bullish on is Brendan Jones. I was working on an article, just kind of talking about some guys who had these nice stretches last year that I just really wanted to see um, you know, played out through more played out through an entire season. So Brendan Jones, just his best stretch when he after he got to Double A, he had 128 plate appearances, 274 average, 391 on base, 566 slugging for a 175 WRC plus, 7 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 18.8 K percent, 16.4 walk percent. What was so fascinating to me about this is when we saw Jones in 20 when he after being drafted in 24 and when he was in high A in 25, we knew he had a really nice hit tool. We knew he had a really nice swing decisions. We knew he was fast and he had a salt could move around the outfield, but he didn't really have much pop. He when he got to Double A after, I think it was the first 15 games kind of struggled. He clearly made a decision that he was going to first of all, pull the ball. He pulls the ball really nicely, but pull in the air, he was gonna risk losing some contact and risk some poor swing decisions to make more impact contact. And he hit 7 home runs. It had an ISO of 292 in that 128 plate appearance stretch. I really thought that he could have been. I really thought he could have been the starting left fielder, center fielder, and leadoff hitter for the Yankees as soon as 27, if not 2028. I really thought he was going to be just someone who found his way and was an important table setter. So honestly, losing him really hurt me as well. And I really like Hasso. I really like Matthias. I think they're more utility pieces, but they're still utility pieces that could have had an important role. So yeah, it does suck losing 4 guys from an already
Hmm.
pretty thin hitting department in the minor leagues. So, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do now because the rumor is they're still in the market for Freddie Peralta or another starting pitcher. So, we talk about all the starting pitching depth they have, and they do. They have, I think they still have 3 elite guys, um, m- and then some additionally further down, some pretty solid guys. So, are they going to be able to make a trade from that wealth? Because they really haven't over the last 7 months.
I mean, the benefit is they didn't touch their depth, and
Hmm.
that's important because not only do you have guys injured, but it's been years since they've gotten through spring training healthy with their rotation. And you do have guys who presumably are healthy, but also threw more innings than they've thrown before last year. So not touching the depth, still having those guys, and now Weathers, and perhaps an opportunity to add another guy. Sure, the chances are the Yankees make out better in 2026 with this deal than the Marlins do. We just don't know yet. And what you said about an already thin system. I mean, we're talking about you got to keep signing minor league free agents just so you can put a team on the field in some of these places. I
Yeah,
mean,
to
you got to go
piggyback.
down like 2 levels to find, oh, we drafted this guy or we signed this guy as an IFA rather than we brought this in from outside the organization so we could play.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what Aaron said, the trade took a few of the solid bats that were in the org, and I mean, looking at what's in the org now, it might take a season or two to recover on the offensive side of things. You're definitely going to need some of the guys that are in the FCL, maybe even Tampa, to step forward and Tampa, I think was already on the light side of things, right? I think their best hitter was Marshall Tool, and he was dealt with in the offseason.
Yep. Yeah, and you know it's something that this fascinates me, and I really want to see how it plays out. But I really think most teams, maybe there's Angels are still, a complete mess. Rockies have even gotten better, but it feels like most teams have gotten to a level where they're at least adequate with pitching development. The National, as you know, I'm from DC. I love, I support the Nationals. Paul Taboni's been going crazy, taking a bunch of driveline guys, taking a bunch of really smart guys from college programs like that. They're gonna. I have no doubt that their pitching development's gonna be a ton better. Um, So, when the Yankees, I still think they're probably one of the five best at developing pitchers. But if it's something where everyone's getting decent at it, it really seems to me no one's overly interested in trading for pitching prospects, but they're obviously super interested in trading for starting pitchers at the pro level, um, which creates this interesting thing because the Yankees, as I was kind of mentioning, they traded 15 guys at the deadline, obviously four more here. It was De La Rosa from the DSL, Griffin Herring, Josh Groves, and Ben Shield. I think it was four. Maybe there's another pitcher I'm forgetting. I guess Clayton Beater. But yeah, five of the 19 prospects were pitch only pitchers.
There's
When you're supposed to be a pitcher heavy organization, who was
one more
it?
guy from Somerset.
Tristan Vreeling.
Yes, really.
Really, yes, thank you. Still, 6 out of 19 guys from a pitcher heavy organization. That's severely thinned out the hitting. And I think Jarrett DeHart, it was clear that they were better at the plate this year. And I honestly, I feel like they were probably this year was better than maybe the last 5 years. Maybe like 21 or 22 when you had Volpe, Wells, and Jason hanging around down there. Um, but the point is, I think we need to continue to see the hitting development get stronger and push that way to elite level. Because if pitching development isn't what people are looking for in the minor leagues right now, then you need to make sure the hitters are there. Um, and obviously, I mean, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole because MLB apparently centralizing development technology and what can and can't be used. That's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But it is going to be important for the Yankees to find a way to replenish. Because obviously they're not going to want to trade Dax Kilby because he looks amazing.
Hmm.
And but what that leads to, like, what's a guy like Jackson Lovich or Kyle West or Caden Kent's future with the organization? Because those guys have a lot more. We're going to need them to play pretty dang well, given what we've just dealt away over the last 7 months.
And
Sorry for
this
that
last
rant.
year makes you think that that could happen. A guy like Parks Harbor, even
Hmm.
Hasso just got traded. Undrafted free agents who become Rafael Flores, who become prospects. So
Top prospects.
yeah, so then
Yeah.
you can look down and see what they have right now and say, I don't really see much here. That could be a different story 4 months from now where we feel a lot better
Hmm.
about some guys. And maybe especially on the pitching side, they've started to spoil us. Like who's going to be Cam Schlittler this year? They shouldn't grow on trees, but we keep having these successes as a development stories. And Aaron, your point's a good one. Trades around the league. It used to be that a pitching prospect was gold, and now people are trading for bats because, like you said, we can make our own pitchers and in volume, but bats are hard to come by.
Yeah, like
Probably
I'm just
because pitching development has gotten so good, it's hard to find hitters.
I just try and think, Mason Miller went for Leo DeVries. Juan Duran, Mick Abel was in that deal, a solid starting pitching prospect, but I would say, not Duno, oh God, Eduardo Tait, the catcher, he was the top prospect in that trade. I can't think of the other
Felt like a
deals,
dozen kids were in
other
that trade.
yeah, I'm trying to think of like other top deals that happened at the deadline. But yeah, it really feels like a lot of the big deals revolve around hitters, at least the top prospect being a hitter. I
Well,
can't think of any other trades off the top of my head right now that
Try
happened.
this on. So yesterday, I was sitting in front of my computer when Jack Curry puts his tweet up that says the Yankees are getting
Mhm.
Ryan Weathers for 4 prospects. And I shot Carlos a message and said, I think we're going to see some guys go because I know Ryan Weathers has years of control. He's young. So I thought the names that popped into my head were not the ones that went. I thought, oh, Legrange's in this or Hess is in this. I did not. Did you expect to see 4 position players go for him?
No,
No.
no. I think that definitely surprised me. And like kind of you said, like it's pretty awesome, especially when you consider 2024 and how barren we were. It's pretty crazy that in just a year's time, we're able to bring so many guys. Some of them were established. I'd say Flores had a pretty good 2024 before that. But Rock Riggio rebounded.
Mm-hmm.
So like it is interesting that he brought all these guys up and we were able to trade them. and that's awesome. And it gives me confidence. I need to see DeHart do it again because it's only been 1 year. But if he can, it's going to be hard to keep bringing a bunch of hitters up and
Yeah,
trading that many prospects.
it sucks that pretty much all we've talked about so far is guys that are gone.
Yeah, I guess unfortunately it hasn't been a chance to talk about anyone new yet.
Right.
Let me bring up one last topic before we move on. Um,
Mhm.
the Yankees pretty much needed just a fifth starter. Why couldn't they have just gone to spring training and say, you know what, Elmer, well, we're going to give you the full shot to try to win this position, and that wouldn't have cost them anything because they
My
already had an insurance policy, right?
my answer to that is if you look at projected WAR for starting rotations, Red Sox have number one right now. Their starting rotation is Garrett Crochet, who's a top four pitcher in baseball. They
Was that
just
as of
got signed.
yesterday? Was that as of yesterday or as of today?
I'm talking about today now.
Okay.
They have yeah, Garrett Crochet. They just signed Ranger Suarez,
hmm
who, is a very, solid two or number three. They just traded for Sonny Gray, who has a three. That's really nice value. Brayan Bale is a nice
Sorry.
five. Tolley and Early still have a ton of potential. They just traded for Johan Oviedo, who like kind of like Weathers has a lot of potential, just hasn't been able to fully put it together. So yeah, that's a scary rotation. Then you look at the Blue Jays, who, Trey Savage looks great. Kevin Gausman's a great top of the rotation arm. Just signed Dylan Cease, who's another really nice arm. So that's three guys you'd really like right there. Cody Ponce is a very interesting signing from Japan. And then you still have Berrios, who you're kind of hoping for a comeback. I really don't know how good he is, but still, it's, interesting guy to have there. Um, Bieber, if he's healthy, apparently there's some concerns about his arm, but if he's healthy, that's a solid pitcher. So those two teams, they have a lot of pitching depth. Whereas the Yankees right now, it's Fried, Schlittler, Warren, Keel, and now Weathers. I like all five of those guys in concept, but let's be real. If like you're really trusting Cole and Rodon to come back and be effective, and then all seven of those guys being healthy come October, I'd feel a lot better about this team's chances if they could get another, top three of a rotation arm. So I think that's just kind of the idea behind it is loading up on pitchers and having more than you need. Because I would love Elmer to have a shot at the rotation. Don't get me wrong. I think, I remember Nick being on here and I said something that there was a non-zero chance of him being in the starting rotation. Probably that happened in October, November. But just because I think that doesn't mean you should, be really, I guess, keeping that, kind of banking on that being something that could happen because it is risky to go on a guy who hasn't, only pitched what, 10 innings in AAA. So that's how I view the equation.
Yeah, could he win the fifth spot? I believe so, but I don't want him to be the fifth option. I'd like it if he's the eighth option because we're going to need the eighth option at
Yeah.
some point.
Cam Schlitter was the eighth option this year, basically.
Yeah,
And
that's the thing.
it worked out great. But it's also nice he
He
had
might
that
have
time
even
to
been
get
he
where
might have
he
even
needed
been
to
lower than
be.
that. He might
Right,
have even been
because
lower than that because he was in double
Yeah,
A
I
when the
guess it
season
was
started.
Winans had to start, but Yarborough came through.
Mhm.
Carrasco, yeah, he was like the ninth option because I guess if
Yeah.
you consider Carrasco and Stroman starting in the rotation.
right. So I think they're going to need that depth. I think you look at the Dodgers last year, where it was where are all these guys going to pitch, and then so many of them are hurt during the year, but they all come back at the
Everything
end,
just fell into place.
and now they have a rotation. And they still almost lost the World Series, but a big reason why they won is because they had so many weapons to throw at the end of the season. So
Hmm.
yeah, the it's like Cashman says, the more the merrier at this point. And I don't think any of us would be surprised if some of those guys like Elmer stack up behind him this year and become viable, or at least start sniffing the big leagues because they've developed over the offseason. They got guys who are moving in that direction.
I just think one other piece to it. Obviously Freed, Rodon, and Cole, the I guess the free agent incomings, they they all have at least 3 more years under contract. Then you have Heel, Warren, and Schlittler, who I guess Heel is only 3 years also now that he's arbitration. But Warren and Schlittler, have 5 or 6 years. You have plenty of control with them. That's six guys. Not to mention Elmer. Elmer, Hess, and Grande, who all have very reasonable chances of making MLB debuts this year. You don't have room over the next 3 years for nine guys. You can't just keep Elmer, Hess, and LeGrand kind of in the wings. Like at some point, it doesn't have to be this year, but over the 2027 or 28 season, they need to be MLB players. Otherwise, you're just stalling them. So
Right.
I do think that there is room to trade one of them. As much as, I would love, I can make a case for why I want each of them to be on the Yankees. I think LeGrand at the very worst could be, a lights out bullpen option. In fact, I've kind of petitioned for that to happen in
Mhm.
26 at some point, just because I think you can't beat that type of arm. You can't
Yeah.
get that at the deadline. Elmer, I think, could be a very, very steady guy with a ton of pitches. And then Hess, I just think he's a powerhouse, power workhorse.
He's
I
a bulldog.
love his mix. I love his frame. I love what he does on the mound. So I think there's a reason why you want all of them to stay. That's why they're top prospects. But I
Mhm.
just think where they are, you do have the luxury of being able to move one of them.
And
It's
you,
moving two would be hard, but moving one I can get behind.
what you just said about the bullpen, I think is important for some of those guys because right now, this is about as weak of a bullpen, I think, as the Yankees have had going into a season. It doesn't mean they're done. They
Hmm.
just don't build bullpens like this. Usually they try to load up there. So there's opportunity if they can't do anything for guys to break through there. There might not be a spot in the starting rotation, but if Legrand takes the next step, then yeah, I think you can find a spot for him in the bullpen.
I mean, yeah, convert him into Dellin Betances.
Right.
Um, Moving on to the next topic is what are you guys most looking forward to in 2026?
All right, I'll
Just
go first.
disconnected there for a second.
Yes.
It was like Max Head.
So
Good, Max.
I'm looking forward to guys who right now are just names to us becoming the next people that we're excited about. So the guys who haven't really established themselves from the draft last year, the Mac Hewers, the Pico Cones, the Rory Fox, that kind of guys. Some people who haven't pitched yet becoming the next group on the pitching side, or guys coming back from injury, maybe a Chase Hampton or a Thatcher Hurd. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with a Brock Selvage or an Alan Facundo. Are these guys going to continue as starters, or can they be fast tracked as bullpen options? Does somebody jump onto the scene who we already kind of know about, like a Landry in the lower levels? So I'm looking forward, and I know I just said all pitchers, and that's because I have no freaking idea what's going to happen on the hitting side. Um, so I can't say I'm looking forward to it. I'm more just hopeful that some hitters emerge like they have in the past. But I'm looking forward to some of these names that we know becoming guys that we're actually excited about because they're now viable pitching prospects.
Let me go next since Marcus just stole my thunder.
That's why I went first.
I was gonna say that I'm most looking forward to the pitchers coming off injury, like Chase Hampton, Thatcher Hurd, Sabia Marte, Chalney Arias, Brian Henry. I'm looking for Luis Velasquez, and I'm looking for full seasons from Henry Lalane. I'm very, very much looking forward
Mm.
to a full season from Lalane, Facundo, Brock Selvers, like you said, and the pitchers who have yet to debut, like Mac Estrada, Pico, and Mac.
I think the thing I'm looking forward to is, I kind of, as I mentioned a few times this episode, the 2025 season was a very good season. There was a lot of positives to talk about player wise, and we did plenty of that throughout the season on this show. But there are, still a number of players who didn't overly impress me, that I really look forward to seeing and hope that they can get back on track. Obviously you mentioned Brock
Yes.
Selvage as a
Oh, I thought you
guy
were gonna say
who,
Roderick.
oh, well, we'll get there. But,
Okay,
I'm
okay,
gonna start, I'm gonna go through a few names specifically.
okay.
Brock Selvage, like you mentioned, just
Yeah.
he was doing well in Double A in 24, got that shoulder or bicep injury, and then came back this year and just did not look good at all. So I would love to see him kind of rediscover himself. Kyle Carr, I know his ERA looked really good, but if you look at, those first 3 months of the season, how he was getting by was not sustainable. But then over his last nine starts at High A, he all of a sudden had a, not just a .96 ERA, but he had 2.66 FIP, which is tremendous. And he was striking out more guys and walking more guys. And I'm dying to see a consistent Kyle Carr because, at the very least, I think he could be a really nice left-handed bullpen weapon, but there's still a chance for him to be a starter.
I'm only laughing
Um,
because you
yeah.
kept telling me not to believe what my eyes were seeing.
At first it was because it was like he had like a 1 ERA, it's 1 point something ERA, but like
Yeah,
a 3
you're like
point
it's all
something,
smoke and mirrors.
it was until he kind of turned things for real in those last,
Mhm,
2 months. So it's just, yeah, now I'm kind of curious, like, is that for real? I want it to be for real.
mhm.
Um, but we'll see. But then, you kind of go to the hitter side, Francisco Valorio, where he had a weird season where he was making
Yeah,
more contact, but he wasn't hitting for any power, and I'm
yeah.
just dying for him to put it together.
Hmm.
And then Brando Maea, who we were talking about the other day, where yeah, he was hitting on the ball on the ground a little too much, bit too much, and some of the slash line looked unsustainable, but
Hmm.
he also definitely showed improvement, and he's a really gifted fielder and arm and runner, and I want to see him healthy. Um, so yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the guys who just either for one reason or another didn't have it all together and showed off their best stuff, do that in 2026.
All right. And the last topic, Marcus, go ahead. Give me a breakout candidate.
Man, a breakout candidate. Well, for whatever reason, because I haven't seen this guy pitch other than on video, Pico Cone.
Hmm.
I think that's the guy stands out to me that we could be talking about him as being the next guy this year.
I'm gonna go with Brando Maia. To me, Brando put up more extra base hits in half the games from last season. 3 home runs. Walk rate was down a little bit. Strikeout rate was around 22%, 140 WRC plus. But watching off-season film of what he's been doing, he's hitting the ball with a bit more authority, hitting the ball a lot more in the air, which I don't need him to hit for power or for home runs, but I definitely need to hit more line drives and not so many ground balls. So if healthy, I'm expecting a breakout season from Maya.
Funny that this is the final topic. So I made an article on December 19th about prospects I'm backing to break out. Of course, one of them was Dylan Lewis. But I'll give a hitter and a pitcher. A pitcher, I'm going to say Thatcher Hurd. I think from a pitch, he has the most dominant pitch mix of any of maybe not any, but top three in the organization. He is a very nice fastball, very nice slider, very nice curveball. The stuff is there, and the Tommy John sucked, but I can see him just coming back and just being dominant. I really like that pick last year, and I'm really hopeful for him. And then my hitter, I'm gonna say Emmanuel Tejada, um, or Tejada, excuse me. You look at him, he's a smaller guy, came back from ACL injury, and he made a lot of contact, didn't get on base a lot with walks, didn't strike out, but the thump wasn't there. But just when I looked at his data, he had 110 max exit velocity, which was 75th percentile at low A, which isn't, it's not amazing, but it's pretty solid. And he had an average exit velocity in the 58th percentile. So, he can hit the ball with a little bit of heat. And I kind of compared him, he kind of has a very similar profile to Dax Kilby. Kilby hits the ball harder for sure, and I don't think he's going to be as good as Kilby, but I don't know if Tejeda can get the ball in the air more and pull it in the air more, especially. I think he could be a really nice, top 20 third base prospect. I'm very hopeful for him that he can get some of that together now that he's healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think he's a
health
good baseball player. I
health
think
is important for him because he's had
Hmm.
back-to-back seasons
Yep.
where he's had big time injuries that cost him a lot of development time. But
Carlos, I just
definitely a
got to ask
decent.
you about Maea. I was reading through the Baseball America Top 30, and among the details that caught my eye,
Yeah.
that they called Maea a fringy runner. And when he signed,
Hmm.
Roland said he was a double plus runner. What do you think
Yeah,
about
I think Baseball America had him at an 80 speed, rated him at an 80 in speed.
I
So
mean, he does look like he's getting
yeah,
thicker. So does
yeah,
is his profile as a player changing?
I don't think so. Like you said, he's getting a little he's not a kid, he's not a teenager anymore. He I've watched videos of him in this offseason. He does look a little bigger, a little bulkier. Definitely added some weight. I think for me, looking at his numbers, I think I don't want to say, hold on, let me frame that right. I think one of his biggest issues is in terms of like base stealing is knowing when to go, because I think if I don't have the number, I don't know the number, but I remember that it was a lot more than what I wanted it to be. So I think he needs to learn to read pitchers better, understand who he's running against the catcher. So it's not just, oh, I'm really fast, I'm going to steal the space. There's more to it than just that.
He only had four st swipes in 19 games last year, so
Yeah.
And I think
which
that
is,
second stat, that's important. 19 games. The more
or
games he
20
plays,
games, excuse me, but
well,
still.
oh, either way, the more games he
Yeah.
plays, the better that's going to get.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just, at a per rate, because he was 19 bags in 35 games and 24 at the same level. So yeah, it's just there was a drop off last year.
How many
I don't
quads
know
stealing?
if, 1 second. Three. So yeah, 4 to 7. That's not good.
Yeah.
Where he was 19 out of 22 the previous year, yeah. So
Yeah.
he definitely wasn't going as much and wasn't getting on the same
That could
ability.
also be due to the fact that he had back-to-back injuries, leg
That is
injuries,
true.
right? So
Because it was an ankle,
he
right?
might have been gunshot, right? It was gunshot. It was an ankle. I think it was ankle in
Yeah,
both seasons.
he might
It
have
might
been
have been a little
dealing with
gunshot
it.
because of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Either way, yeah, something to look forward to, or look to see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're gonna wrap it up on that, unless you guys have anything else.
I think just one thing I want to say, kind of tying back to the beginning, I think the IFA fiasco has been draining on all of us, but we have to remember the way this cycle works, where it is, there's already guys from 2029, 2030 coming to deals. I don't think there's ever a good time to do this. So, we just gotta, hope that while this process has been annoying, the Yankees make the right hire, and there's still a lot of time to go in the future years in getting guys on board. So, let's hope that they nail this process down, because it's at least good that they saw it was an issue, because we've talked about it plenty.
Yeah.
A lot of these top IFA guys have not performed the way, I mean, their
Yeah.
bonuses would have them to.
They've missed on a lot of
So,
their seven-figure guys.
yeah, it's been frustrating, but, I'm being optimistic that they've committed to getting this right.
Which I think is why we can't overreact to it too. I mean,
Hmm.
we keep getting excited about guys every year, but that's why we're here, is that those guys didn't pan out or haven't panned out at this
Yep.
point. So we can't overreact about 16-year-olds because anything can happen.
You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Um, on a positive note, before we close out of here, one of the guys rumored to be in the job for Donnie Rollins' job, comes from the Cardinals organization, and I think Pipeline just put out their executive polls and all that. The Cardinals did rank in the top 10 in terms of IFAs.
And that guy's had a variety of roles in baseball. He's got a vast array of experiences. There's some good names that have come out as candidates for that job. So at least that's promising.
Yeah, and I just, one of the top prospects, one of the most helium prospects in all of baseball, Raniel Rodriguez, an 18-year-old in the Cardinals organization. He's been super, super talked up this winter. That's obviously a guy they got. And there's definitely more interesting guys in that Cardinals organization that came from the international side. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one for them to pursue.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna head out here. On the way out, please make sure you hit the like. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe. Thank you guys very much, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Good night, guys.